No. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Sylvia, Dr. Sylvia. I'm very well, thank you.
You can call me Sylvia.
Well, I think you worked hard to earn that title, so and that's obviously one of my ambitions. So not that I want to be called doctor every day, but I will give
At
you
least,
that one
at
up.
least sometimes, yeah. Well, that's something we can talk about as well, because I'm keen to understand what your research interests are as well. But Diana, you have written a book. You're doing so many things. You're an independent social worker. You've got an organization that you've shared the name with me and its meaning and so on. So really, we're going to have a chat. We're going to have a chat. So first of all, let me give it over to you to share something of who Diana Hylton is, and just something about your background and how you came to social work.
Okay.
It's a lot.
Right. That is a lot. So as you said, my name's Diana Hylton, and I am a qualified social worker. A little bit about my professional background.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
So I qualified with an MA in 2007, and since then I've specialised in children and families, and particularly safeguarding. And I mean, I've worked across the services. Actually, I've got quite significant experience. Started off in referral and assessment because that was my passion. I loved that. I started in quite a difficult local authority, Haringey. I'm sure that you understand when I say that, but I've got a lot of passion, a lot of heart for Haringey, for what it's been through, my journey with Haringey. And then I moved to the court arena, and again, I really loved that aspect of social work, and became a team manager within the court arena. I loved that. I loved, I loved all of that, in terms of working with the children and the families, but also working on the permanency plans, and where possible. My passion is to keep children in their families. So, it wasn't always possible, but I think we've done some good work, and I'm kind of proud of that aspect of my career. Then I moved on to, I did a little stint in independent work because I moved out of London. And I just kind of moved around then. So I did a bit of independent work, and then I went back into local authority work. I worked in numerous local authorities after that, like Reading, Essex, Wandsworth. And then, so I did safeguarding, assessment again. And then it was really important, as you know, that I've written a book, as we touched upon, which is called Both Sides of the Track. And, it was something that was really important to me. It's been a burning ambition, passion, had to be done for many years.
Let me pause you there for a minute, Diana. This book, were you thinking about it as you were moving through your career, or did you think about it while you were training?
I thought about this book. I mean, part of it, to touch on that. So part of it, so the book basically is essentially some memoir, and it's about my experiences of being on both sides of the care system. Yes. So it's called Both Sides of the Track being the care system.
For those of you who are watching this, you can see that Diana has a picture of it in the back there.
My lovely husband.
I have my copy.
Got it everywhere.
Yep. Good stuff.
So yeah. So it's about my experiences of being on both sides of the care system, the track, as I said, being the care system. I mean, we could go back on that if you feel in a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose I'm wondering, I'm curious about, when did it start bubbling away inside of you that you wanted to write something? So,
I mean, I went through a lot of trauma, I would say, within the care system myself. Extreme sexual abuse and neglect and physical abuse by the people that were meant to look after me. Mm-hmm. Fast forwarding, we're going through. Obviously, I talk about a lot about my experiences within the book, but fast forwarding, there was a trial at the Old Bailey. In 2001. I talk about all my experiences leading up to that, etc., etc. But it was after the trial before I started my training, because I already did my first degree. I mean, I had zero, I mean, I really had a lot of, wouldn't like to say hate, but I was never going to be a child protection social worker. I was never going to work within the system. I was always going to work with children. I was always going to support children and families, but it was never going to be within a statutory sort of framework, because I just had no faith in social work. I was very angry against the system, but it was as a result of going through the trial, coming out the other side, and there's other sort of stories within that made me realize that actually, if I'm going to make a difference, if I can actually, I actually need to understand and work on the other side. And there was a particular the book really was born out of me coming through the trial. So that was that long ago.
This is 2001.
Yeah. I mean, it was that long ago that it first sort of came into my mind, but it would never have been the book. I mean, I'm a great believer in the, you know, things happen for a reason at the right time. You know, and it would not have been, it would have just been about my experiences of trauma and abuse, and how we sort of took the system to task and got some justice. It would have been that, which would have been a reasonable story. I think it would have been an important story, but it wouldn't have the same impact as what it has now, because I've obviously got 20 years on the other side. It's about, so my whole book is about, that's what happened, this is what happened to me, this is what I did with it, this is what I am doing, and turning it into something good, really. And so
let me just also ask though, in terms of, because it is extremely revealing, the book itself and the story and your experiences, did you have any sense of ambivalence or doubt? Because it takes a lot of courage. How did you kind of come through that? What was it that pushed you to write it, even though it's a difficult read and no doubt difficult write?
Oh, absolutely. And it took really for me to be in the place. I mean, essentially, as you said, I was writing it, or it came in my mind more or less 20 years ago. There was no way I was going to be able to write that then. I was not in the right place, in the right environment. It took, and even then, even though, you know, even when I'd been a social worker for perhaps 10 years, I knew that it was a burning, I had to write. I knew I had to write it. But even then I wasn't in the right place. You know, as you know, social work is exceptionally demanding, and there's no way I could have done my role and write a book at the same time. It took me to be, you know, I met my husband. We've been married 7 years now, and but it took him really he's really nurturing, really supportive, and I found the mental space and the physical and emotional space to be able to write it, because I was in the right place to write.
That makes absolute sense.
In terms of ambivalence and being brave, and you're absolutely right, it took a lot of courage to write it, and it takes a lot to reveal yourself in such a personal way. But I knew, and I flirted for many years around writing it under a pseudonym. So I'm going to hide behind it. I'm going to tell everything when we're going to hide behind it. But that would never have worked, because again, I needed to own my truth. I've got, you know, yes, I've got things that I have done in my youth that I have regret for, but, you know, I forgive myself, and I've overcome all of that. And I've done a lot of soul searching, self-development, and, you know, I believe my story, and already I have so much positive feedback, so I'm more confident in it now. I mean, I was a little bit like, oh my God, what? But, you know, I believe it's going to help a lot of people on both sides of the track. So in terms of professionals, but most importantly, people who have struggled with trauma and adversity, because it takes, you know, you don't never ever get over it. You learn to live with it, and it's a process. And my book really ends with, I think, and it does, with I think, you know, the principles really that I've cultivated over the years that have helped me survive, but not only survive, I think thrive. So
no, that's
inspirational.
Yeah, that is so good to hear, that you kind of you went through the process and you know, to some degree experienced some level of healing. Um, but it's about, I suppose, as you say, learning to live with one's past and so on. Because I mean, you know, trust me, a lot of us wouldn't share some of the stuff we got up to in back in the day. But I think your story is really important from that perspective. Do you in terms of, I mean, again, we agreed you're not going to give too many spoilers, because in actual fact, we want people to actually read the story and make something of it, and make good of it. But do you think that being a social worker, and writing your story, I mean, how did that feel? Because, you know, on the one hand, I mean, you even hinted at it earlier that you absolutely had no intention of getting into this profession.
Yeah.
What made you?
So again, I talk about it in the book, but and I don't mind sharing some of it, because I still think
Yeah,
there's no way
okay.
I could actually talk about the whole book and anyway, so it's important to share some of it. But yeah, so I'd finished my degree, my first degree. I was working within I worked for an amazing charity, Quorum. Loved
Okay.
it. Loved the work that I did there. Was really passionate about all of that. But it is a charity, and charities, and even though it's a large charity, one of the oldest charities actually, I think it's one of the first charities in England. But even though it's a charity, you still have to fundraise,
Yeah.
and to keep the services going. So I had a wonderful manager at the time, and I was like her assistant manager, and the trauma of keep trying to fundraise to keep the services going that we were providing was just so difficult. So
Mhm.
it got to the point that we've decided that she wanted to leave as well, and it got to the point of like, what do I do then? Where do I move from here? You know, I've built my career up, fledgling career up in this sort of area. What do I do now? And it really was, and I believe, again, the universe and things happen for a reason, that I actually applied to become, back in the day, still now it is, back in the day when the Leaving Care Act was just newly introduced, they created a personal advisor role, and it was the first of its role.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
went for this interview thinking it's my job, I must get it because I've got all the skills. It's going to be I actually really believed that I was going to get it. Anyway, I went through this whole whole sort of comprehensive interview process and didn't get it. I was really upset about it,
Mhm.
for nanoseconds, I should add, because even then I kind of picked myself up and get on with it. But then I thought, okay, where am I going to go? So then I was looking through the Guardian newspaper, and there was a massive, like, 2-page spread of they were recruiting trainee social workers, and they were then funding people to do their masters, and it was the first of the kind. They do it a lot now, you know, like Grow Your Own, Step Up to Social Work, all of that. But
Mhm.
that was the first of its kind back then, because that was 2005. So it was only the first, and they were only just coming out really of, like, Victoria Columbia, you know, bless her soul. So they were really throwing everything behind it, you know, to like try to like improve the services. So there were, you know, it was the first really of its kind in England, of, you know, because I was in the first cohort.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be a social worker, but I did want my master's. So then, and the carrot was they were paying you to do your masters, and they were going to they're paying you for employment. So it worked. You know, I was a young mum. I was a mum. I had both my children by then. I had a mortgage, and I needed to be able to work as well as study. So there was no way I was ever going to be able to go and do a master's by myself and not um, work at the same time. So the carrot was the masters. Then more so. So then, in order to get that, that was an even more comprehensive recruitment process before. I think there was something like, I was told, like over 70 people applied for like 10 places. So
Wow.
Yeah. So it was, but I really studied for that. I wanted that. I was like, no, I'm going to get it now. And then I became much more passionate about social work when I read. I read the whole inquiry, the Lord Layman inquiry. I read that from front to back. And
Okay.
then, yeah, no, and then I became really, really passionate. I was like, wow, wow. Because I obviously had heard about Victoria Columbia, bless her, but I didn't know the ins and outs of all, like the the failings in terms of like multi-agency work and all of that. I didn't really have any awareness about that. I only had.
Mhm.
So once I'd read that, she became really my passion, and I was like, wow, I'd been failed by the system. She'd been failed to the point that she'd died
Mhm.
by the system. It's horrific, it's tragic. And I felt that, I don't have to be, just because the system failed me, I don't have to be a failure within it. So that's when my passion really became ignited. So then I knew I was going to get the post, and so I really tried hard. I mean, even going back as far as you needed to have GCSE in order to do your masters. You had to have obviously a 2-1 degree. You had to have some experience. You also had to have your GCSE in English and maths. Now I had the GCSE because I'd done that after I'd gone back to college, way after I'd left school. Because I left school, as you know, like literally in a cloud of dust, 15, didn't care about education. I didn't even think that I needed it until I got to a certain point where I knew I needed it.
Mhm.
But I didn't have a GCSE in maths, and I hated maths and didn't understand maths. And so that was going to be the stumbling block for me. But I taught myself maths enough to get
Really?
through the
Good,
test.
good for
Yeah,
you.
I don't know how I did it, but I did it. But
Gosh.
again, I prayed. I prayed really, really hard. Please let me get past this test. Please let me pass this maths test. And I did, fortunately. And then it wasn't just that, we had to do like presentations. So as I say, it was a comprehensive recruitment
Yeah,
process,
that's
but I
good.
got it.
Mhm.
And
So
that
you
was the start of my social work career.
I mean, even in terms of what you've just shared, a couple of things bounce into my head. You were working for a charity, and I know Quorum was sort of very sort of advocating in terms of young people. But then when you have the sort of the pressure of having to raise your own funds, and I know that, I mean, I've worked for a few charities, and that is a constant pressure. It takes away from the work.
Mm.
I think people go into it, they want to work, do the work, they want to work with children, they want to work with families, they want to help and so on. But then you've got that added pressure of income. And so that
Mm.
one jumped out at me straight away. Uh,
Mm.
Interestingly, I managed a leaving care team just when that 2000 legislation came in and all these various positions emerged. So you reminded me of that as well.
Mm.
And I was thinking, as you were talking about Victoria Climby, um, it aged me as well, because I'm my pivotal thing was Jasmine Beckford, which was
Wow. Yeah.
back in Brent.
Yeah.
So it's it kind of makes you wonder, uh,
Mm.
have things improved? Have
Mm.
they not? You talked earlier when we talked off air about a broken system. Uh,
Mm.
say some more about that, because I'm also wondering, with all the sort of experiences that you've had from your formative life, how on earth do you cope working in the system?
I mean, I did share with you, like sort of 20 years now, we're coming up for, I'm kind of at the end of my journey in the system, but I think it's important. Oh, yeah, going back to the broken system, it is broken. I don't think anyone could pretend that it's not. The social care, education, police, NHS. I think all of our systems are broken. Do I think they're better than what they were? I think we've had periods where they've been really good. I think there've been periods where, where they've not been so good. But what I would say, even if it's broken, we have to have it.
Yeah,
Because if we don't have it, what do we have?
yeah,
What would children, like thinking about social care, children's services or adult services, just social work in itself, the statutory system, if that wasn't there, and even though it's battling against, all these different sort of issues, like, you know, that when I started out in social work, and I'm sure you, as you said yourself, when I started out in social work, there was more services, and there was like a blooming period in my career where actually lots of, particularly after like child deaths, where they're particularly, and child deaths happen all the time, as we know, sadly, and we can't stop that. You can't stop abuse. You can't stop child deaths. You can't. We have to work with what we have. And as I say, I think, all these years of austerity have broken the system. Bottom line is, where there was a period where the services were really good, the best that I think that they probably could have been in the sort of history of it all. And
And there
then
was investment in it.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
it just got wiped out. Literally now people are social workers now. It's probably one of the worst. I feel sorry for trainee social workers. I feel sorry for, social workers that are coming through, because people often, it's such a misunderstood profession. I go back to, my days when I obviously had a lot of anger and I was never going to be a social worker. But, I've turned that's flipped on its head. I've got a lot of passion for social work. It's an absolutely essential profession, completely misunderstood. Yeah, we get it wrong. Every service gets it wrong, but there's a lot of times we do get it right, and nobody ever hears about that, really. It's unless we champion it ourselves within it. Even within social work, we're not even support. I mean, that's why I think this is an excellent podcast, and why I reached out to you, because I think it does matter. Social work does matter, and it's important for us to recognize that within our own profession in order to help others to recognize that. Because you go outside of it, there's a lot of it's almost like a demonized profession in some ways.
Oh, gosh, yes.
It's like, people that don't understand it think it's about something else, or social workers are rubbish, you can't do this, you can't do that. It's a very thankless profession. So going back to where I go, back to, like, as I have like an element of sort of sympathy for young or new social workers coming through the system, because there's not a lot of support, and they're going to go out there, and it's just a much tougher time to practice. And but it still is important, and we have to remember that, and we have to support.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree with you. There is a lot of misunderstanding, and I think, in terms of what you're doing, having spent 20 years in the profession, having had the experiences you've had personally, I kind of see sort of seasons, if you like, and your new season seems to me to be about trying to, spread the word in terms of how things went wrong, how you kind of immersed yourself in it to try and sort of do a good job, make various changes. And now, where do you see yourself now? What season are you in now?
We're in a fantastic season for me personally, I think, and also professionally. I think this is, what I've worked really hard to get to. It's the beginning of the season, I would say. I mean, I think it's about, so as you know, I've started it's not an organization, it's only me. But a business, again, it's only me, and I don't really like to focus it on it being a business. And it's not a charity either, because I haven't, it's not set up as a charity status, but basically
a movement.
Yeah, and it's mine, and I've started it, and that's AnAID Empowerment, and that is like an umbrella for so many things that I'm going to be doing. So, as you know, right now I'm an independent social worker. I do parenting capacity assessments for different sort of local authorities, primarily at the minute Devon.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I've also recently applied and been successful to become an independent visitor for NIAS. So I'm going to do that as well as part of that. So that's my social work. Then I'm also working on becoming a motivational speaker and also a trainer, because I'm a qualified practice educator, and I want to sort of marry all of that together, but with my book. So about, so obviously I've got an element of teaching and mentoring in terms of my professional career, but I want to be able to just talk about what it's like to go through what I've been through, and so many other people would be able to relate to that, but then what it's like to come out on the other side and how you do that. And so that's my motivational speaking. And I also want to speak a lot about self-development, because it's been a very important part of my journey. And so that leads on to my coaching, because I'm now developing a coaching program. So AnAID, five interconnected steps to empowerment, that's what it's called. And that encompasses the principles that I cultivated over the years to survive and thrive. So yes, I'm working on my coaching program, which I'm going to roll out in the new year. So it's going to be a one-to-one coaching program, plus I'm also going to do a course. I'm working on more books. I've got another book that a series here really that I want to work on, and it's going to be.
Well, give us a hint then. Come on.
Yeah, so it's a series around so basically social worker diaries.
Okay.
So I'm creating a fictitious social worker, sort of based on myself. And it's going to be really just about sort of like shining the light really on the different sort of things that we go through, different things that children and families go through. Obviously not, it's going to be fiction, but based on real life experiences and my own experiences and other people's, really.
Very, very powerful media, actually, to tell stories, because I think, yeah, very, very powerful, and will resonate with lots of people. Okay, so that's where you're at the moment, and that's the journey that you're taking. I know that you're also interested in doing some PhD.
Oh yes.
Studies. What have you got in mind in terms of research? What are you curious about?
So what I'm very curious about, so I'm thinking about coaching and mentoring, going back to Quorum, the big project that we did work on, which I was really passionate about, were we trained and recruited volunteer mentors to work with children in care and teenage parents. So me being a teenage parent myself, and also having been in care, I was really passionate about that. And what I found, it really, really worked, and it was amazing. And why it worked was, and why people responded to it, was because people were giving up their time, and particularly care leavers and young care leavers, to know that somebody's investing in you because they want to, not because they're getting paid, not because they're a social worker, not because they're a support worker. They're doing it because they care enough to do that. It's a powerful relationship, and it really, really works. So moving fast forwarding, I've always been interested in mentoring and coaching. Even my practice teaching was about that. I felt that it was important for me to impart. I think it's always important to, help other people who are coming up the ranks, to support them in that way and support their learning. So moving forward a little bit more, as I said, I'm very interested in coaching, and I'm creating a coaching program myself under AnAID. And in terms of my research, what I'm really interested in is why mentoring, particularly peer mentoring, isn't used as much as it could be. And I know it's been touched on, but I just don't see much of it out there. Why isn't it used as much as it could be within child protection, within the court process, within the care proceedings process? Because I actually think it needs to be. And I think that, if you're thinking about how we're going to help, because if the goal is to keep as many children in their families as possible, so that means helping parents make and sustain the changes they need to do, how are we going to do that? So for me, one of the ways, which is really powerful, is peer mentoring, but it's not really used that much, or it's just not in. So what I would like to study as part of my PhD is, what are the barriers, how would we implement it, and hopefully come up with a program. So in the early sort of idea of my program, which I've touched on in my book, I think, yes, I did touch on it in my book, is, so we have PEP for children, don't we? Like I'd like to do a PEP for parents.
Personal education plans, for those of you who are not in it.
Yeah. So I would like to do PEP
We
for
we
parents.
love an acronym in social work.
We do love an acronym. I would like to do PEP for parents. So that would be a personal empowerment program
Okay,
for parent empowerment program for parents, sorry, which
right.
looks at how do we incorporate, it's very in its early infant stages. I'd need to do my PhD first and it would need to be informed by that, but that's my ideas.
That's the sort of general area, yeah. Let me
Yeah.
just slip in a quick plug. At the Tavistock, where I work part-time, we have a doctorate there. And you might want to look at that, Diana. You might want to look at that.
I think I might.
Uh, I'm one of the teachers on it, so you may stand a good chance. Tell me a bit.
It's been one of my dreams and passions, and I know I'll get there. I've always
Yeah,
known that. Yeah,
well, the very first thing is to have an idea, isn't it?
yeah,
So and you
yeah,
definitely have one. So
yeah,
and in time, refining and so on is
yeah,
possible.
yeah.
Uh, what's your association with the Tavistock?
So my associate, I love the Tavistock, and if I would could do my PhD at the Tavistock, that would be the pinnacle. That would be the pinnacle for me. Um,
Come.
I through my first introduction to the Tavistock was through I've had a lot of therapy
Yes.
at the Tavistock as a result of what happened in my childhood and in my life, and and I credit that. I mean, there's a wonder, and I won't mention her, but and I haven't mentioned her in my book. She's and I wouldn't do that. But she knows who she is, and she was absolutely wonderful. And I mean, I credit her as my psychological mother. I never even told her this at the time. I mean, I had 10 years of therapy off and on, never even told her that. But, reflecting on it now, she was instrumental in helping me come to terms with the trauma and
Sure.
find ways to deal with it and get over it. And not as I get over it, but live with it. And I
Yeah.
mean, I'm very, very much healed. And it obviously wasn't just my therapy, but it was a significant part of that. So I loved it. I've always loved the Tavistock for that reason.
Mhm.
I loved it even more when I became a social worker and realized how leading it was around the world. I was like, wow, 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 wow. And I kind of felt a bit privileged actually because it's really hard to even get therapy. I mean, some of the parents, I mean, as much as I've been through what I've been through, I've got a lot of gratitude because I've overcome it. I've
Mhm.
had a lot, I've had the help to do that. Not many people get. I've been as fortunate to being able to have access to such high, high quality. The therapy that I had access to, not many people can get that for that amount of time. So I've got a lot of gratitude for it.
Mhm.
And it needs to be done because, as I say, that's what, and 6 sessions of therapy or, this intermittent sort of therapy that they're offering people
Brief
doesn't work.
therapy.
That
Yeah.
doesn't help, doesn't work. Because if you've got like deep set trauma or intense difficulties that you've got to try and deal with, and meeting somebody for 6 weeks or a year or whatever, it's not really going to help. It takes that trusted relationship over time to be able to get through that. So when I realized that I'd been so fortunate, because I had been fortunate, I've not been fortunate in lots of things, but I've been fortunate
Yeah.
in other ways.
Mm.
I became even more passionate. And then, I had certain lectures, different part of my training. With different things at the Tavistock. I've got friends at the Tavistock. So the course leader for my social work training, I don't think he might be mentioning, Dr. Paul Dugmore. Anyway, he's lovely.
Paul. Paul.
Yeah.
Paul is one of my bosses.
Oh wow. Well, he knows me very well, and
Okay.
he was the course leader of the program for Haringey to grow their own social workers. So I've got a lot of affection and a lot of admiration and respect for him.
Big up Paul. Big up PD. I hope you're
Big up.
listening.
He knows that, and I've had a lot of respect for him. So it's a combination of why I love the Tavistock.
Okay. Well, I mean, obviously this isn't about,
I do.
the Tavistock, but I mean, you're being honest about how it's been helpful. I think it's so important for what you said around, you know, what worked for you, which was longer term sustained therapy as opposed to, I guess, a brief intervention, which doesn't work for everyone. I suppose the other niggling thing for me in speaking with you, Diana, is you know, that notion of trauma, because my fear, I suppose, or my worry or wonder is you've been through so much trauma, and then you were working in an environment of trauma. How on earth did you manage that? Was it because you had support? Were you able to be quite open and honest with those who were supporting you? For instance, your line manager. One of the things I'm involved in with some colleagues at the Tavistock is we're working with middle managers and senior managers around having a more reflective approach to supervision, or certainly including it. Was your experience of supervision helpful?
It's been variable, I would say, over the years, to be honest with you. I've had some excellent managers. I mean, I've been, again, quite lucky because, you know, the experiences that when I speak to people, and I hope that I've reflected that in my own, because I've obviously been a manager for many years myself over the years. And it's so important to, you know, supervision is really important, but support is really important. I've been lucky because I've had a number of really good managers, thankfully. And I know that it's not everyone's experience, and that's just the way life is. I think partly I'm resilient, clearly. And I think that I've fostered that over the years, and I've spoken about that, you know, in at the end of the book, when I talk about the principles that I cultivated to get to where I am and to where I'm going to go. You know, obviously I've fostered that resilience over the years, and I've understood that that's important. I think another part of it is that I'm very passionate about children, keeping children safe. And I think that stems from my own experiences. And I don't think I think that has always been my overriding passion. But I'm also passionate about keeping children in their families where possible. So again, I think I had a unique sort of way of working with families, and particularly parents, particularly when they was in such an adversarial position, you know, at the point of losing your children. You can't be in any more adversarial situation than, you know, in a care proceedings process, and the stakes are really high because you're either going to get your children back or not. I think the way that I worked with parents was very honest, very open, very meeting them where they were, rather than overwhelming them with because it would get overwhelmed. It's easy for us as professionals, academics and all of that to
set goals and you know,
but it's not if you're coming from a position of whatever you're coming from. I mean, most parents, what I do believe, there is evil in the world, we know that without a doubt, but overall, and I don't want to put a percentage on it, but you know, overall, most parents fail, not because they don't love their children, it's because they just can't do it, and they just have problems.
Yeah.
So it's about meeting them where they're at and trying to help them and being honest and giving them the options, and just so I think I had quite a good skill in that, and I think I'm able to say that, and I think all of those things combined gave me resilience and helped fostered that and everything. And yeah, but as I say to you, I'm at the end of all of that. And I think there is.
I mean, you say that, but I think certainly in terms of your experiences and experience, it's not going to leave you, and it will come through in other ways. It doesn't necessarily have to be frontline practice or frontline management. To have some impact on our sector.
Or even independent work, even that.
But somehow to reshape that as a different offer, but a powerful offer. I think it says a lot.
And so that's where I want to go.
You may think you're finished, but it'll often no. I know what you mean, though. I know what you mean. It's just about changing your emphasis, which is what I think you're
Yeah, I
your
think what you
advice.
just said there actually is just about not being a frontline. You know, even though I'm independent now, and I do have an element of autonomy, which is great. I'm enjoying it, and I get to do stuff that because that was part of it. I knew that I couldn't publish my book and remain working, you know, in a statutory local authority. I knew that that was never going to happen, and I didn't want to be curtailed by it either, because I felt like it's taken all of it, what it's taken to write it. There's nothing wrong in what I've said, but I do think there'll be limits to what I could do as a practicing social worker within a statutory role. So I knew that I would have to leave. And it's funny, you know, through my own coaching, I had some wonderful coaching as well to get to this point. You know, I realized that Mark Wilkinson was my coach. I don't mind giving him a little shout out there. But he did help me understand, really helped me understand that, you know, don't put limits on yourself. And because I was coming to the end of my book, and I was in a dilemma of how do I publish it? And because I was a MASH team manager at the time. I was a MASH team manager for like 3 years, and I liked it, I enjoyed it. I went into MASH really so that I could write the book, because as we know, I don't know if you know, but I'm sure you do, MASH probably is the one area of social work where you probably get sort of life, you know, like a work-life balance.
Yeah, the beginning, middle, and end. Yeah.
I only say sort of because everyone thinks everyone has it easy in MASH, and it's not, because it's phenomenally fast-paced, phenomenally.
Yeah.
But I was able to write my book having worked full-time as a team manager in the MASH. So there you go. I wouldn't have been able to do it in any other way, any other role that I've had. Yeah. So, but I knew that I couldn't stay there. So the dilemma was how am I going to publish my book? Talk about, because interestingly, I'd left Haringey, but went back to Haringey to be when I was in the MASH. So I'd left Haringey for a number of years, and then went back after I went all around houses, and then went back to become like the MASH team manager there.
Oh, is that where you did the MASH?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I spent a little time in Haringey as a consultant, but I don't think you well, no, you wouldn't have been around at that point. No, it was longer than 3 years ago.
And I left MASH in April of this year.
Okay, no.
On my March of the year. June. Not even that long ago. So I left. No, wow. I'm thinking that. Well, no. I left MASH in June, and my book was published in June. That was it. Yeah.
Oh.
That was it. Yeah. Wow. So but I knew I couldn't stay. So yeah, Mark, my coach, was my coach at the time.
His name again, Mark what?
Mark Wilkinson, Life Remixed.
Okay.
Brilliant. And you know, I was working for him for about 18 months throughout my working to get my book out there and everything. And it was him who, you know, was quite instrumental in like, don't put any limits on yourself. How can you publish your book, still do what you're doing, and, you know, work on developing yourself, because you've got all these passions, or you want to start a business, you want to start an AID, why can't you do it? And it was that, then I started to think, actually, I can do it, and I will do it. And, you know, and I gained confidence. I thought, well, I'm going to go back into independent social work first, which is what I'm doing now. I'm going to move towards becoming a motivational speaker, write more books, a coach myself. And then once I've managed to build that up, I'll be able to leave independent social work behind, and then move towards working towards my PhD and building up my business. Really, there's lots of different things I'd like to do within that under the umbrella of AnAID Empowerment. So
sounds like a plan, lady. No, it sounds brilliant. Sounds absolutely brilliant. Well, Diana, tell us a bit more about how we can before we go there, you know, I keep leaping backwards and forwards.
All right, I can do it.
Yeah, good. We talked about the broken system. In terms of your own insights and your experience, etc., what more do you think we need to do? And it doesn't have to be an exhaustive list, but what are some of the important things you think we need to do in terms of our system, be it safeguarding or working with children and families? And I think there was a bit of a hint in terms of even your approach.
Yeah.
But, you know, again, you may have some other ideas that you want to share.
So essentially, I do think that we need to think a bit about our services that we're providing, because literally they've been wiped away, which is a big problem. Because, you know, even me now as an independent social worker, you know, I can come up with a range of recommendations, but if the services aren't there to underpin it, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
We need to, you know, it's not even rocket science, to be honest. We've had so many child death inquiries that tell you what we need to do. And it's like almost like it's a surface addressing it.
Yeah.
So in terms of, we know that social workers, I mean, it's all very well saying to social workers, you know, do this, do that, have all these, you know, all the laws, the policies, the procedures, everything.
APIs and
yeah, all of that. But if you give social workers literally too many children and families, I don't like saying cases, but we're going to say cases. If you give them too many cases, that overwhelms them. How can you do that work? So again, you know, it might be, you know, the government. I feel like the government. That's not here to run the government down, because I'm sure it's much more complex than what I probably understand. But, you know, if you don't fund things properly, then how are you going to get the services that you need? So you can't sort of like put stipulations in and say, right, you know, like even like Ofsted, I've got a big issue with Ofsted. You know, I think it's important to have a regulatory body over it, but it's like almost a bit of a farce. It's like, how can local authorities be excellent? You know, like you've got like outstanding, you know, the gradings that we have. How can you be outstanding, even though we have that outstanding authorities? I think it's very subjective anyway, all of it. But how can we have outstanding local authorities when we don't have the services? You know, they're in the ground. There's nothing. How is it outstanding? How is it helping? And we're just about not even got our heads above water. You know, these children are suffering. Children are at risk. Bottom line is, and that's because social workers can't do the job that they need to do. So it's a multifaceted, complicated problem, and I don't have all the answers. I have some ideas, but I do think it needs concentrated funding. Stop breaking down the services. It was as we know, as we said just earlier on, that there was a point where it was kind of like a honeymoon, but it was just like a really blooming period within social work, and a lot of good.
I think I can recall the period you're talking about, actually.
Yeah, and then it just died, and now it's dead. Now it's not even. Now it's like gosh, we're like in an apocalypse world now. It's like how is anyone? And the problem that you've got now, we need to support social workers properly, because the problem that we have now, and it's shocking and it worries me, and I've seen it time and time again, that, you know, younger people are coming through the ranks, doing their training, coming into social work 2-3 years later, I can't stand it, breaking them down, and then they're leaving. Yeah, getting that continuous sort of cycle of social work training. How's that helping the system if you don't have anyone that has the resilient strength to stay within it, build up a experience, then to pass that down to other people? What's going to happen if literally we just get this train of people just doing it, can't do it, leave? It's all impacting on the children and the families, and it's creating this problem, and it's a massive problem. So I do think it's broken. Is it repairable? I don't even know if it is. I don't know if I'm an optimist, an eternal optimist, and I'm glad that I am. But I'm a realist as well, and I'm not sure that. I don't know, but I think we still have to try.
Yeah, and thanks so much for sharing your thoughts as far as that's concerned, because I think you're right on the button when it comes to what essentially is the underinvestment in the sector, and lots of tweaking isn't really going to entirely solve it. It's very worrying if people are coming in and leaving shortly after, and I think there's research that supports that too. You know, the longevity of practitioners and perhaps middle managers and so on. It's startling, really. So thanks for sharing.
And interventions backed by research that work. Yeah, and don't wipe them away when we've got them, because you're never going to get. I mean, it's like a false economy, a false sense of no foresight in it, because if we don't invest in the interventions, we're not going to make the changes. They're going to get more children that are removed from their, I'm just talking about children and families social work, more children that are going to be removed from their parents. That's just a phenomenal cost to the system. You know, to go through care proceedings is phenomenal cost. Then to actually keep a child in care is phenomenal cost. Then the outcomes for the children in care are really poor, as we know, and then that has a phenomenal cost on society. So unless we start to think about it long term in that way, with real interventions that actually work and don't take them away, then this is where we're at with the broken system.
Well, I mean, you know, I think, Diana, the fact that you've positioned yourself slightly outside of the system, with something to say, with lots to say, is going to be really helpful, you know, because sometimes, you know, when you're in it, it's difficult to speak or to express. But I think you're probably in an ideal position now. Having been through the system, worked in it, and have a degree of wisdom about it. So, you know, it's good to see you here.
Thank you. I hope to do as well. I'd like to, part of my, although obviously I want to work, you know, work with people around empowering people in all different ways. I'm very passionate about social work, and so as much as I'm leaving, as you said, as much as I'm leaving statutory, or not even in statutory now, as much as I'm leaving the framework of frontline social work or practicing social work, I don't think I'll ever leave it. As you said, I'm always going to be passionate about trying to help, because we have to have a system. We have to have social work. Without it, then what would we have? Nothing. Then what would happen to children, families?
Shudder to think.
Yeah.
And so, as much as society may not want to think about it, but we who are in the know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. No, exactly that.
All right, Diana, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Tell us where our listeners can get your book. How can they keep in touch with what the work you're doing? And I certainly would like to invite you back for another chat once I get to the end of your book, which will probably be in the next couple of weeks. So yeah, how can our listeners get hold of your book?
Thank you. So yeah, it's available on Amazon.com. Amazon.co.uk. So Amazon anyway, British Amazon, and all over. Both Sides of the Track, it's called.
Can I just stop you there a minute though? I forgot to ask you, why did you give it that title?
So Both Sides of the Track, a journey through trauma and adversity towards forgiveness and freedom. Both Sides of the Track is of my experiences of being on both sides of the track being the system.
Okay.
So literally being on one side of the system, what I went through, moving to the other side, which is my professional career. It'll make more sense once you get to the end of the book. And then marrying those two together to where I am now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So
yes, it's available on Amazon. In terms of connecting with me, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram. My website is AnAID Empowerment.com.
I'll put references to this in the show notes, as well as a link to purchasing the book.
Yeah. So Amazon, AnAID.com, AnAIDempowerment.com is my website.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be doing a trauma summit, Overcoming Trauma Summit, on between the 3rd and the 6th of October. So I'll be doing that with Wendy Keir. She's also an author around trauma recovery.
Is that something that people can register to attend, or how's that?
There's going to be available on my LinkedIn. I'm going to be sharing all of that on my Facebook and LinkedIn and Instagram over the next couple of weeks.
Do you have a link for it now?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
No, send it to me afterwards. I'm just asking so I can put it in the show notes.
I actually don't have it to hand right now, but I can.
Send it to me later.
Yeah. So yeah, my website.
6th of October.
Yeah, I'll be speaking on the 6th of October at 3 o'clock. It will be live, and it's going across a lot of platforms.
Lovely.
That's my plan really now, to keep reaching out. Oh yes, I've got Professor Ray Jones, the eminent professor. He's reading my book. He's reached out to me recently. He's going to be reviewing it for Professional Social Work magazine.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, I can't wait for that. And he's reached out to me already, and and I'm really, really pleased, because I've got a lot of respect for him as well. Because
And you are coming to the Tavistock to talk to my baby social workers, aren't you?
I am. Yes, I am. I'm just moving around, really, just working on getting my message out.
Yes.
And yeah, just living my journey and my life.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I wish you all the success. Continue networking. Continue getting your message out there. And well done again for having published such a a serious book. Right. That's all I can say. A serious book.
Yeah.
So yeah, really well done.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to speak about it.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure. Any final messages that you'd like to share with our listeners before I let you get on with the rest of your day?
The final message would be that yes, it's a tough read in the beginning. It does get more enlightening and more inspiring, for sure. And then I've had lots of feedback about that. And yeah, I'm just really happy that that I've put it out there, and just go for your dreams, follow your passions, and don't give up, ever give up.
Lovely. Diana Hylton, thank you so much for joining us here at Social Workers Matter. Look forward to meeting you in the flesh very soon.
Thank you.
Take care.
Take care.
It's a wrap.
It's a wrap.
What I'll do, Diana, you'd like a copy, obviously, of the...
I would, yes. Great.
And,
put that on my...
Yeah, sure. And I'll also edit this thing. It's not going to need much editing, to be honest, but and then I'll send you a copy of that too.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Right. Okay.
And don't trust me, I'm going to be in touch with you because especially as you know, Paul, but no, I'll speak to my colleagues who run the social work program, and we can perhaps discuss some dates and things. That'd be great.
That'd be great. Yeah, and do give Paul my love. He does know me really well. So
yeah.
I will. And that tell him that
you're all right.
Yeah, he knows I'm all right. We've had some recent sort of communication. He knows that I've written a book, so yeah.
No doubt he'll see this and then he'll say, "Oh no, yeah." All right.
Okay, lovely. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it was great. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.